Good afternoon on today's Angry Bulletin. Yesterday, CNBC broke a story that threatens to blow the entire private space station industry wide open. The most promising space station that NASA was funding, Orbital Reef, is now in danger of falling apart completely because Blue Origin is pulling out of the deal. And meanwhile, on the opposite side of the Atlantic, the European Space Agency is determined to see that Europe becomes a viable presence in low Earth orbit. This includes a space station. This includes human-rated spacecraft in the long run. But in the short run, it also includes a reusable supply ship. First to be used to resupply the ISS, and later to be used to resupply private space stations, including a European space station. All of this and more coming at you on The Angry Astronaut right now. Good afternoon, and once again, welcome to The Angry Astronaut. A last-second reminder to all of you, once again, on Sunday, October 1st, this is going to be my last event in North America for my tour, at least for now. I'll be coming back in November to carry out my promised dates in Arizona and California, but in the meantime, I'm going to be in Denver, actually at the Westminster Rec Center, from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m., once again on the 1st, $10 if you purchase your tickets in advance, or $15 at the door. All of the details are in the description. And if you would like to support this tour, because I intend to carry out a European leg of the tour as well once I move over there next week, well, you also know how to do that. It's in the description. Okay, enough self-promotion. Let's talk about the news at hand. So before we get to the topic that really makes me angry, let's go ahead and talk about something that has me kind of excited. Unexpectedly, the European Space Agency has decided to build their own resupply ship. A ship similar, say, to the Cargo Dragon, or perhaps similar to the Cygnus resupply ship. Something that Europe had in the past. And then, like so many other things, they let it go and decided to just let the Americans and the Russians handle the whole damn thing. But recently, Europe has decided to take responsibility themselves once again, and what they've got going is a private contract being doled out to a number of very promising and innovative startup companies, and the competition is on. Starting in 2008 and continuing until 2015, the Europeans had their own ship to resupply the International Space Station, holding up their end of what was truly an international collaboration, starting out with something called the ATV-1, also christened the Jules Verne, followed up by a ship called the Johannes Kepler, then the Eduardo Amaldi, the Albert Einstein, and finally the Georges Lemaitre. And all of these vehicles carried out their job extremely well. However, they were very expensive, they were not reusable, and even though they could carry a substantial amount of cargo up to the ISS, they were frankly completely outdated once the Cargo Dragon came along. However, instead of coming out with a more advanced and more competitive resupply ship, the European Space Agency simply decided to let the entire project go, and in 2015, the last of the ATV vehicles was deorbited. Now, it took a considerable amount of time before Europe decided that relying exclusively on the United States, or especially on the Russians, was not a particularly good idea. And earlier this year, they rolled out a competition to private startup European companies to provide a new, updated, and reusable resupply ship to not only pick up the torch left behind by the ATV vehicle, but also to provide services to new private space stations in orbit, including a European station. Now, the competition has been rolled out in 3 separate phases. The first, Phase 1-1, runs between September of 2023, in other words now, and June of 2024. 2 companies being selected to advance their concepts up to a preliminary design phase. Companies will also be required to have secured appropriate third-party financing to continue development. And as you're watching right now, Airbus has already been selected to provide lunar resupply to the Lunar Gateway and also to carry a large logistics lander to lunar orbit, and it's possible that Airbus may use a modified version of this moon cruiser to provide resupply to low Earth orbit as well. However, surprisingly, at this point, Airbus has not yet thrown their hat in the ring, at least not officially. Now, Phase 1-2 from July 2024 to December of 2025, companies that successfully complete Phase 1-1 will be required to produce test articles to de-risk the most critical areas of their respective designs. Again, companies will be required to show continued success in securing third-party financing. And then finally, you have Phase 2 from January 2026 to December of 2028, the final development step leading up to a demonstration mission to the ISS before the end of 2028. Any company will be able to compete in this phase regardless of their involvement in the first 2 phases. This may explain why Airbus has not yet officially entered the competition, possibly because they think that they're a shoo-in regardless of when they enter, but that may be a mistake if that's what they're thinking, because their competition is formidable indeed. By the way, only 2 million euros has been set aside by ESA for Phase 1-1. Now, you might think with such paltry funding that this is going to discourage small startups from getting involved in the process in the first place, but this is not the case at all. Rocket Factory Augsburg, a company that I have been following very loyally over the last several years, has thrown their hat into the ring amazingly, given the fact that they have been focusing almost exclusively on a rocket that's capable of hauling small sats up to orbit, not nearly ambitious enough to carry something as large as a resupply ship up to LEO, but this is indeed what they're planning to do. RFA, by the way, have been hard at work in Saxavord, completing their launch pad and preparing for the maiden launch of RFA-1, either at the end of this year or sometime more likely early next year. Powered by 9 Helix engines and featuring an orbital transfer vehicle known as the Redshift, the RFA-1 has some very impressive capabilities for a small rocket. 1.3 metric tons up to sun-synchronous orbit, 850 kilograms to a polar orbit, all the way up to 300 kilograms to lunar transfer orbit. In other words, RFA-1 can deliver the same payload to the moon that the Rocket Lab Electron can deliver to low Earth orbit, and all for about 3.5 million euros, because RFA intends to use off-the-shelf components provided mostly by the German auto industry. But this little rocket definitely could not deliver this ambitious new vehicle called the Argo to low Earth orbit. By the way, they are building this in conjunction with another innovative partner known as Atmos Space Cargo, who, by the way, are based in Denver, Colorado, where I'm going to be over the weekend. And indeed, the Argo has some impressive capabilities. We're talking nearly 3.5 metric tons up to low Earth orbit, which is about the same that the Cargo Dragon can deliver, but on top of that, it's fully reusable via an inflatable heat shield. Now, the Argo is also capable of bringing cargo back down to Earth from an orbiting space station, which is another requirement of the ESA competition, and it features things like a Phoenix engine, which is the same that their main rocket, the RFA-1, has, and also it's constructed out of stainless steel, making it affordable. Elon Musk would probably like that. It also has autonomous guidance and control for rendezvous, advanced docking mechanisms, and as I said before, before, an inflatable atmospheric decelerator, allowing the ship to re-enter the atmosphere intact and then to be relaunched. But one of the Argo's main advantages, in my opinion, is the fact that it's launch vehicle agnostic. It can be put onto the fairing of just about any rocket, well, any relatively large rocket that is, which means that it could fly on the Ariane 6, but it could also fly theoretically on a Falcon 9 or perhaps even a Rocket Lab Neutron. But here's another very big advantage. Rocket Factory Augsburg is a launch provider along with being a space company, and they are planning to build a larger vehicle capable of carrying this resupply ship up to orbit. And given the price points that RFA has been able to provide for their smaller rockets, I would not be at all surprised if they could deliver this ship into low Earth orbit for maybe 30 to 40 million euros, which is about a third less than SpaceX charges for a Falcon 9 launch, giving RFA a clear advantage over their competitors, especially competitors like Airbus, who are probably going to be charging top dollar like they usually do. However, RFA has a very serious competitor in the Exploration Company. While RFA is exclusively a German company, the Exploration Company is a collaboration between two countries, France and Germany, being based out of both Munich and Bordeaux. And what they have come up with is an intriguing ship as well. I had an opportunity to interview these folks last year, and the Nyx, as you are about to see, is a very impressive looking vehicle that bears a great deal of resemblance to the Crew Dragon. A ship that's designed not only for resupply, but also to carry out various types of experiments in a microgravity environment for up to 6 months. But it goes even further than that. This vehicle is also capable of carrying payloads all the way out to the moon. It's also capable of landing on the moon, hopping between locations on the moon, and also returning cargo from the moon. This thing can do it all. However, can it do it affordably? Well, that's the big question. But first, let's talk about its capabilities. We're talking about 6 metric tons up to low Earth orbit, but also 5.5 metric tons all the way out to the Lunar Gateway. And if that wasn't enough, it can also put 2 metric tons on the lunar surface. But here's the problem, at least as I see it. The Nyx most probably is so big that it's not going to be launchable on any vehicle except something like the Ariane 6. And the Ariane 6 is not going to be an inexpensive rocket. This could be the case also with Airbus. That being the case, then we could be looking at anywhere between 80 to 100 million euros to launch this thing, as opposed to perhaps less than half that with the RFA solution. However, that is pure speculation on my part. The Exploration Company's capabilities are indeed impressive. Really, when it comes down to it, this thing seems to have greater capabilities than the Argo, although RFA would not tell me whether or not the Argo is capable of lunar resupply. In my opinion, it probably is, but that's just a guess on my part. The competition is on. For the first time in a very long time, the European Space Agency is making very aggressive strides into low Earth orbit, and I don't think there's any going back from here. They're going to become a power player in our new low Earth orbit infrastructure and in a new cislunar economy, and I'm very excited to see what's going to be coming next in this competition. Okay, let's move on to the bad news. As most of you probably know, I was extremely excited about the prospects represented by Orbital Reef. All of that was dashed yesterday when CNBC released the following article with the following title: Blue Origin, Sierra Space, weigh future of Orbital Reef Space Station as partnership turns rocky. And here are the high points. Quote, Jeff Bezos, Blue Origin, and Sierra Space are navigating a potential end to the Orbital Reef space station partnership, according to 3 people who spoke to CNBC about the situation under condition of anonymity. Discussions are ongoing, and CNBC sources describe the situation as fluid. Shortly after unveiling the Orbital Reef project in 2021, Blue Origin won a $130 million contract from NASA for design work on the private space station. And that's what annoys me the most, because as you have seen on my channel time and again, Sierra Space has been working very hard on their Life module, their inflatable module, which is a key component of the Orbital Reef station, a module capable of providing about 300 cubic meters of habitable space with every launch, meaning that they could transfer up to the entire capabilities of the International Space Station in a mere 3 launches. An amazing capability and something that they have been working very hard on for a considerable amount of time. However, the CNBC article would have us believe that Sierra Space, just like Blue Origin, is completely dedicated to other projects besides a space station, which in my opinion is a
basket full of shit.
The article also gives us a brief background on Orbital Reef, saying, quote, shortly after unveiling the Orbital Reef project, Blue Origin won a $130 million contract from NASA for design work on the private space station. That contract was one of the 3 funded Space Act agreements, or SAA, that NASA issued for the first phase of its commercial LEO Destinations program, or CLD. Blue is the prime contractor under that NASA award because, of course they are, with Sierra as a subcontractor. As you can see, Sierra Space has been providing constant updates on their progress with the Life module, whereas Blue Origin has provided virtually nothing. As a matter of fact, shortly after CNBC reached out to Blue Origin for comment on Orbital Reef, Blue Origin suddenly posted an update, the first one they had given, by the way, for over a year, talking about, quote, progress on our Commercial Destination Space Act agreement with NASA. Our team is currently testing window frames and materials in a relevant space environment, unquote. And by the way, they didn't mention Orbital Reef by name. Ooh, window frames and materials, as opposed to everything that Sierra Space is doing right now? Kind of makes you wonder who should have gotten the prime contractor position. Now, the reason for this development is obvious. Blue Origin just got a $3.4 billion NASA contract to build a new lunar lander, so Blue Moon is getting all of the priority, whereas Orbital Reef has receded very much into the background. And in my opinion, that's something that Sierra Space is simply not going to put up with. But here's the good news. Sierra Space doesn't have to put up with it. When I interviewed them about this topic back in 2021, when they first established an agreement with Blue Origin, they were very clear that the agreement spelled out that if either contractor was not living up to their obligations, if either contractor wanted to go their own way, they definitely could. And given the fact that Sierra Space has raised billions of dollars recently to support both Dream Chaser and a future commercial space station, they can definitely go it alone, because not only do they have the habitable space, they also have the engines. They have a developing second stage project that could be used for propulsion for not only a space station, but also for a cislunar transport, as they originally envisioned back when they were called the Sierra Nevada Company. And while Blue Origin is talking about things like windows, and only after being prompted by CNBC, Sierra Space is talking about deploying their first Pathfinder demonstration of their Life module in orbit by 2026. Yes, that's right. 3 years from now, Sierra Space is planning on deploying their first commercial space station. That's aggressive. That's commitment to NASA's project, and that's the reason why Sierra Space deserves that $130 million and not Blue Origin. Not that that's going to happen, of course, given the enormous stable of lawyers that Jeff Bezos always has at his disposal, but this is something that I saw coming, unfortunately, right when this agreement was built. Even though Blue Origin technically had lots of promising things they could have brought to the table, at this point, Sierra Space needs to take the reins of this project. And there are other companies involved as well, by the way. Companies like Boeing, Redwire, Genesis Engineering Solutions, and Arizona State University were committed to the Orbital Reef project as well. What's going to become of them? Well, this is a problem that needs to get rectified as rapidly as possible, and hopefully NASA has the guts to kick Blue Origin to the curb and get a new partner involved in this project and put Sierra Space in charge of the whole thing. Incidentally, I must emphasize that even though I communicated with Sierra Space on this issue, they did not issue any sort of statement on this. They did not provide any sort of reinforcement to what I've been saying in this editorial, although on the other side of the coin, they didn't say that they remain committed to their partnership with Blue Origin either. And in my opinion, that's a very significant thing, one that we're probably going to see further developments on very soon. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, please subscribe. It's so important to my channel. And also please check the description for various ways to keep this content coming. And as always, stay angry about space.